I was the perfect employee but the worst father. What my boss did changed my life forever. I, 52M, have been carrying this weight for months, and I need to get it off my chest. 6 years ago, I missed my son's high school graduation because of what I thought was an unavoidable work emergency. I was the regional manager for a large retail chain, and we had a major inventory crisis that threatened to cost the company millions. At least, that's what my boss told me at the time. Let me start from the beginning. I'd worked my way up from a store clerk over 25 years, missing countless family moments along the way. Each promotion came with more responsibility, more late nights, more essential meetings. My wife used to joke that I was married to my job first and her second. It wasn't really a joke. My son was always a bright kid, top of his class. I remember the day he got his college acceptance letters. I was on a conference call in my home office. He wanted to burst in and tell me immediately, but my wife stopped him, knowing I'd be upset about the interruption. He had to wait 3 hours to share his excitement. By then, the moment had faded. I didn't realize it at the time, but these small moments were building up, creating a wall between us brick by brick. The graduation was supposed to be different. I had actually promised, that I would be there. I had marked the day off 6 months in advance, told my boss it was non-negotiable, even booked a table for a celebration dinner at my son's favorite restaurant. My wife had been skeptical, but I was determined to prove her wrong. The call came at 5:30 a.m. on graduation day. My boss was frantic, talking about missing inventory worth millions, potential store closures, jobs at risk. He said he needed his best person on it, me. He knew exactly what buttons to push, talking about how the jobs of hundreds of employees were at stake, including some who'd been with us for decades. I still remember my son's face when my wife told him I wouldn't make it. He didn't cry or yell. He just nodded, like he'd expected it all along. That was worse than any anger could have been. My wife took videos of the ceremony, but I've never been able to watch them. The thought of seeing him walk across that stage, looking out into the crowd and not finding my face, it's too much. The next few months were tense. He left for college earlier than planned, saying he found summer housing near campus. Our conversations became shorter, more formal. I tried to make up for it by sending care packages, offering to visit, but he always had an excuse. Busy with studies, working on a project, plans with friends. I recognized the excuses because they were the same ones I'd used for years. I threw myself deeper into work, telling myself I was providing for my family's future. My boss seemed to take advantage of this, giving me more responsibilities, more critical projects. I was the first one in the office and the last to leave. My wife started going to family events alone, tired of making excuses for my absence. Then came the day that shattered everything I thought I knew. I was grabbing coffee before work, not at my usual place, as I was running early for once. That's when I saw my former assistant manager. She'd left the company 4 years ago, and I barely recognized her. She looked happier, more relaxed. We got to talking, catching up on old times. That's when she dropped the bomb that destroyed my world. You know, I always felt guilty about your son's graduation day, she said. I must have looked confused because she continued. The inventory crisis? It wasn't real. None of it was. She explained everything. My boss had been running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme for years. The crisis was his way of keeping me occupied during an internal audit. He knew I was methodical, that I would have noticed the discrepancies if I'd been in the office. He specifically chose that day because he'd heard me talking about the graduation. He needed me distracted, and he knew my dedication to the job was my weakness. I felt physically ill. All those years of defending my decision, of telling my wife it was unavoidable, of trying to explain to my son why the job had to come first that day, it was all based on a lie. The millions at risk were real, but they were being stolen by the man I trusted, not lost through inventory issues. The company caught him anyway, 3 months later. A junior accountant noticed something off in the quarterly reports. My boss is now serving 8 years for fraud and embezzlement. I sacrificed my relationship with my son for a criminal's convenience. I spent weeks drafting an email to my son, trying to explain. How do you tell your child that you missed one of the most important days of their life because you were an unwitting pawn in someone else's crime? In the end, I sent him the whole story, every painful detail. His response came 3 days later. Even if you were manipulated that day, it doesn't change the fact that you chose work over family for years. That one day was just the final straw. The saddest part is, you're still making excuses instead of admitting you made choices, hundreds of them, to put work first. Reading his words felt like being punched in the gut, but he was right. I started making a list of all the moments I'd missed. His first home run in Little League, his lead role in the school play, his 16th birthday. Each time, I had what I thought was a crucial reason. Each time, I chose wrong. The deeper I dug into my memories, the more I realized how many warning signs I'd ignored. My wife's increasing silence at dinner, her stopping to ask if I'd be home on time. My son's graduation was just the breaking point of a foundation that had been cracking for years. The irony is, the company I sacrificed everything for doesn't even exist anymore, at least not in the same form. 2 years ago, they went through a massive restructuring. My entire division was laid off. All those extra hours, missed birthdays, and skipped vacations meant nothing in the end. My replacement was let go just like everyone else. I have a better job now, one with reasonable hours and good work-life balance. I make it home for dinner most nights, but I'm eating at a table that's emptier than it should be. My son lives across the country now. He's successful in his own right. I follow his career on LinkedIn because that's the only way I know what's happening in his life. Yesterday, I drove by his old high school. It was graduation day, and I saw all these proud parents taking pictures with their kids. Some were crying, others laughing, all of them together. I sat in my car and watched for an hour, thinking about how I can never get that moment back. My son's getting married next spring. The invitation came in the mail last week, formal, polite, like one you'd send to a distant relative or former neighbor. I'll be there, of course. I'll sit where they tell me to sit, smile for the photographs, and try not to think about how different things might have been if I'd made better choices. The hardest part isn't the big moments I missed. It's knowing that I'll never get back all the small ones. The casual conversations over breakfast, the impromptu basketball games in the driveway, the quiet moments of just being there. Those are the threads that weave a relationship together, and I left too many of them unspun. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I placed so much of my identity in my job. My therapist says it's common for men of my generation that we were taught our value came from our work. But understanding why doesn't make it hurt less. If you're reading this and struggling with work-life balance, please learn from my mistakes. That deadline that seems crucial today won't matter in 5 years, but the moments you miss with your loved ones, those stay with you forever. No company will love you back, no promotion will hug you at night, and no paycheck can buy back lost time. Update. Thank you all for your responses. The support and shared experiences in the comments have been overwhelming. To those asking, yes, I'm still in therapy, working through my regrets and trying to learn how to be a better father, even to an adult son who may never fully let me back in. I've started volunteering at a local mentoring program, trying to help young fathers avoid the mistakes I made. It's a small step, but it's something. My son did reach out after I sent the email. We've had coffee twice in the last month. The conversations are still awkward, still guarded, but they're happening. He's setting boundaries, and I'm learning to respect them. It's not the relationship I wish we had, but it's more than I deserve, and I'm grateful for every minute. For those sending messages about repairing their own relationships, thank you, but I'm not qualified to give advice. All I can say is start now. Start today. Whatever you think is keeping you from connecting with your family, ask yourself if it will matter in 10 years. I can tell you from experience, it probably won't. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.